Good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be here with you today as we kick off this exciting virtual info session for our Residence Artist Studio program for Cherry Street Pier. My name is Jasmine Wiggins. I'm the marketing specialist here at DRWC, handling all things marketing alongside with Austin Marsdale, who's our content specialist. He's on the back end and technical side of our webinar today. And we also have additional marketing team members here, Jerome Freeman, who is our senior digital communications manager, and Mike Barone, who is our Senior Marketing and Communications Manager, who are on the back end of this webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce Sarah Eberle, our Creative Director, who will be leading today's discussion.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Like Jasmine said, I'm Sarah Eberle. I'm the Creative Director for the Delaware River Waterfront Corporation, and I also oversee the studio program at Cherry Street Pier. So each year, Cherry Street Pier welcomes a new cohort of artists, artist collectives, and nonprofits to be part of our Artist in Residence program. We're currently accepting new applications for studio spaces through October 8th, and the studio rentals have a start date of February 1st, 2024. If you have any questions, I encourage you to use the question and answer function throughout the presentation, and we will be answering all the questions at the end of the presentation. So Cherry Street Pier opened in October of 2018, which means we're coming up on our 5-year anniversary. The pier consists of several exhibition spaces, the studio, the marketplace where we host most of our programming, and the garden, which is currently being used as a bar and restaurant. The Cherry Street Pier Artist in Residence program is really unique to the city and to many places. It seeks to foster a unique space for emerging and established artists to collaborate, create, and show off their work. The studio location in a large public space allows visitors to Cherry Street Pier to get a glimpse into the world of art making. We accept artists in all stages of their career, and we encourage the artists in residence to sort of use each other as a resource. We ask that all of the artists be open to working collaboratively with the other artists. So now for a little bit about the physical studio. The pier has 8 studio spaces on the ground floor. Those are about 443 square feet, and they rent for $500 a month. And then there are 6 studios up on the mezzanine level. Those are 289 square feet, and those rent for $400 a month because they're slightly smaller. And also of note, the mezzanine level does not have any ramp or elevator, so it's only accessible by stairs. So it's just something to keep in mind. The rent that I mentioned, that includes all of our utilities and high-speed internet. The only additional fee would be for insurance. So if you have your own certificate of insurance, you can provide that to us. If you don't, you can opt into the Cherry Street Pier Artists Group Insurance Policy, which is an additional $15 a month. And then we ask for first and last month's rent at the start of your lease, and that's sort of used as your security deposit. So each of the studios is fully conditioned with heat and air conditioning and a 100-amp single phase electric service. The main part of the pier is not conditioned. So if you've been down to the pier, you're familiar with that, but each of the studio spaces, the restrooms, the office space, those are all conditioned and temperate throughout the year. Studios don't have plumbing, but there is shared access to slop sinks. So we have 2 restrooms. Each restroom has a small closet in it that has a utility sink that the artists all have access to. The studios come unfurnished, so you kind of have to outfit it whatever way you want to use it. And the studios are accessible to our tenants 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So selected artists get an access card that allows them access to the building after hours. So the studios are managed by the Delaware River Waterfront Corporation, or DRWC for short, which is where we all work. It's a nonprofit. So once you're selected, the artist will sign a license agreement with DRWC to secure your space in the pier. The standard term for that agreement is a year, and then artists can reapply every year to come back if they want to stay longer than a year. So we have some people that just stay for a year, and we have some people that have been there since the very beginning. And then the application process remains the same. So if you're a new artist, if you're a returning artist, you still have to go through the exact same process. You're still reviewed in the same way. And then now on to some of the benefits of having a studio at Cherry Street Pier. So licensing a studio gives the artists and organizations additional rights to the exhibition and performance spaces on the pier. Resident artists have preferential access to markets and exhibition spaces within the pier. The residency provides the opportunity to interact with thousands of visitors throughout the year. I think we're at 120 visitors for the year so far. So lots and lots of people come through. And then access to the year-round activities and events in the space. We try to do free public programming every weekend at Cherry Street Pier. So there's always lots of stuff going on right outside your door. And then you also get the benefit of a collaborative relationship with the programming, marketing, and operations team at the Delaware River Waterfront Corporation, some of whom you see today. All right, now I'm going to go into the application process just a little bit. The application itself is pretty straightforward. So if anyone has any questions about that specifically, they can ask at the end. But in general, so applications will be due on October 8th, 2023. And I encourage you to not only come down, explore the pier, but also explore Cherry Street Pier's website. It's a good way to get to know our current and past cohort of artists, and also to see like the type of programming we do, the type of exhibitions we do, and just familiarize yourself with the space to make sure it's a good fit for you too. And then I also encourage you to sign up for Cherry Street Pier's newsletter and follow us on social media for updates on everything that's happening at the pier. So once we receive the applications on October 8th, we have internal and external committees that will review the applications. Those are made up of staff, community members, artists, nonprofit, all different kinds of people throughout the city. So we all sit down and we review the applications together. So I give that committee some values and criteria to look at when they're reviewing the application. So we give them values-based criteria, and then we also give them operations-based criteria to think about when they're reviewing your application. So the value-based criteria for selection, we're looking to reflect an authentic Philadelphia, which means applicants should reflect the population of Philadelphia and include traditionally underrepresented populations. We're really committed to diversity. So similarly, provide diverse offerings. So applicants should represent a broad range of artistic disciplines, obviously within the constraints of what's possible at Cherry Street Pier, and also represent a wide variety of experience levels. We want to support emerging artists and entrepreneurs, so the applicants should be poised to benefit from being part of Cherry Street Pier, both creatively and professionally. And then we want to support learning and collaboration, so applicants should be willing and eager to be part of a collaborative, community-focused initiative. So I think those are some things to think about as you're filling out your application. And then in terms of operations-based criteria, which are really straightforward things, we look to see, will the applicant be in their studio on peak times when the general public's on the pier? Will you be in your studio using it? Will this be the applicant's primary workspace? Is there another space they'll be using? So is their time split, or is their time going to be focused at the pier? Will applicants contribute to programming on the pier? So we're looking for people who have ideas to expand outside their studio. So not just to do things in their studio, but also to utilize the full space of the pier. And then the final one is, will the studio be engaging to visitors when not in use? So obviously no artist can be on the pier every single hour that the pier is open. So we want to make sure that the studio spaces are interesting and engaging for visitors, even when the artists aren't there. So the visitors always have something to sort of look at. And then once those committees review the applications, we sort of create a finalist group. And then those applicants that move into the final round will have an in-person or web-based interview with members of the selection committee, and then myself as well. And then final notification will be given in mid-December, hopefully earlier, but mid-December at the latest. And then February 1st, 2024 is the official move-in date for the studios. So that sort of wraps up my overall presentation. So now we can kind of open it up to any questions that people might have about the studios, the applications, anything.
Thank you, Sarah, for providing a great presentation about the program and the application process. We'll jump into Q&As. So Sarah, can you discuss the facilities and resources available to artists during their residency?
Yes. So as I mentioned, we have the slop sinks. We do have shared exhibition spaces. So the artists get to do exhibitions. Is actually on the slide right there is the main exhibition space. There's also an upstairs exhibition space, and then we have the amphitheater at the back where we do some performances, and then we utilize the main space for a lot of performances and markets and programming. And then in addition, I mentioned that you have access to the programming team, the marketing team, and the site operations team. We have on-site staff at Cherry Street Pier too. We have maintenance staff, we have security staff, and we have a pier manager. They're there whenever the pier is open. The security staff is there for your protection, but also for the pier. And then the maintenance staff is primarily for the public spaces, but they're always willing to help out in the studios if possible. We do have a site operations team that is located at another location on the waterfront. We're often able to use them as resources for installing things, hanging things, all kinds of different things. And then we do have 24-hour roving security on the waterfront. So after hours, there is a security team that is on site, just not necessarily sitting at Cherry Street Pier, but they all the artists have their cell phone numbers so they can reach out to them if they ever need them.
Okay, great. Thank you. And just a reminder to everyone, if you have any specific questions, feel free to submit those through the Q&A tab. Sarah, can you discuss any opportunities for collaborations with resident artists and other resident artists?
Yeah, so we really look for collaborations. I mean, obviously, when you're applying, you don't know who's going to be on the pier and who you might want to collaborate with. But I think we're sort of looking for an openness to work with other artists, to learn from other artists, to teach other artists. We try to fill the studios in a way that we have some more established artists, and then we have some more emerging artists so that people are able to sort of benefit from that mentor-mentee kind of situation. And then we also try to make sure that we have a good mix of returning artists and new artists, because it is kind of like a learning experience being on the pier. And so I think it's really helpful to have some of those older artists explain things to you. But in general, like we meet as a group once a month. We try to do projects together. Lots of people come up with ideas for programming, then other people jump in and support. DRWC does a lot of programming, and we invite the artists to come in and participate in that together. So there's lots of opportunities to collaborate. And I think it's like one of the things that really makes the studio so successful is that there is that community. Makes it a little bit different from a standard studio space, because it's really like, it almost reminds me of a dorm floor or something, because it's just like everyone's in each other's studios talking, learning. So I think it's really exciting.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. We were asked, how long is the lease for? And do we offer any type of financial aid or scholarships towards rent?
So the lease is typically 1 year. We usually do February 1st through January 31st. There have been occasions when we've been open to doing a 6-month lease if someone wants to try it and isn't sure if they want to stay for the whole time. So we have done some shorter leases. We don't tend to do the longer leases just because I think it's really important for people to experience it before they make that decision if they really want to be there for each additional year. So we try to keep it to a year. For the most part, we have not offered financial aid. We do try to price the studios at a below market value. So we sort of have that built in to try to offer, a fair rent to everyone. There has been a situation where a foundation has reached out and paid part of rent for one of the artists. I think that was the first year that we were open. So there's definitely ways to sort of figure it out. I mean, I think if you apply for a studio space and you make it to that final round and you're unsure about the financial commitment, that's something to bring up during that interview and kind of talk it through, and we can sort of strategize and see what opportunities there might be.
Thank you. You spoke about utilizing the peer space. Can you talk a little bit about how resident artists would exhibit their work at the pier?
Sure, yeah. So the Pier has an extremely robust schedule of programming and exhibitions, which is great because it brings a ton of people down to the pier and it brings a ton of different types of people down to the pier. So artists, as I mentioned, get sort of preferential treatment. So if they're interested in doing exhibitions in the bigger spaces or out in the main space, they just really reach out to me. I have a programming coordinator that I also work with. Her name is Libby. She and I sort of help schedule all the programming. So it's really just a matter of reaching out to me, letting me know what you want to do. We have a form that you can sort of fill out online that asks some questions so that we can fully understand what you're planning. And then, yeah, we try to support the artists as much as possible. So if artists have ideas for exhibitions or programming, we try to push that through and prioritize that.
Great, thank you. We have another question asking, can you share a space with another artist or apply as a collective?
Yes, definitely. We encourage that. That's great. I think currently we just have 2 studios that are shared right now. There's one upstairs that is shared between Orchestra 2001, which is a nonprofit orchestra organization, and then a photographer, James Abbott. They share a studio space. That's been working out really well for them because the orchestra is not in the space a lot. So Jim really gets to use it as his space. And then when they come and they do their programming, they sort of have a home base. And then on the ground floor, there's in Studio 5, Amy Kelly and Mike Thomas, 2 artists, they share a space. They actually didn't really know each other. They sort of met through the studio space and then wanted to share the studio space. It's worked out really well for them. We ideally you come to us with a collaboration or someone you want to share your studio space with. We have had situations where people have come to us and say, I want a studio space, I want to apply, but I would like to share it with someone else. And we did have 2 groups that were going to share that sort of both approached us in that way. And then the pandemic struck, so that never happened. So we haven't actually done that experiment. It's challenging because like, I don't want to be the one deciding who you're going to be able to get along with. So I think it's much better for the artists to come to us with like, I want to work with these people. But yes, we are totally open to that. I think that's a great thing, and people definitely have done it and thrived.
Our next question, can you share any success stories or testimonials from previous artists who have benefited from the program?
Yes, I like to think that that it benefits almost every single one of artists that comes through the pier. There's tons of examples. So we've had artists that sort of started out by vending at our markets that have then moved into studio spaces and then have then thrived and gotten commissions and larger projects just by being on the space. We've had artists that have finished their time at Cherry Street Pier and moved out because they've outgrown their space. They've had so much success, they wanted to open their own building. We had one person go to North Carolina and open her own studio building that was modeled after Cherry Street Pier, which I hear is doing really well. We had another artist who bought a building here in Philadelphia and is moving his workshop, studio space to that building, just based on the growth out of being in Cherry Street Pier. We've had artists that, I don't want to say it's the norm, but we've had experiences where someone's walked into an artist studio and just bought everything on the walls. One of our artists is currently working with Netflix. One of our artists was selected to work with the Eagles. There's all kinds of things. You never know who is walking through the pier. One of our artists, Corey Hanzo, who's in Studio One, met Andre 3000 on the pier, and then that connected him to someone else and connected him to someone else and connected him to someone else, and now he's got this he's been a guest speaker at Comic-Con in the past 2 years in a row. He just got hired by Netflix to make action figures for one of their upcoming shows, so he's just kind of like blown up. And then there's like the normal things, like which are stories that I love to hear, where it's like the artist is like, I sold enough work to cover all my rent this month and I didn't have to pay anything out of pocket. Like that, those I also consider success stories. And we definitely have a lot of those that consistently are able to cover their rent based off of sales on the pier, which is amazing.
Well, thank you for sharing those. Those are amazing. What is your favorite part about running the program?
I think my favorite part is probably all the people that I get to meet, all the artists that come through, all the connections that I make, all the organizations that we get to work with. It really is kind of this really unique and unusual experience. And I feel like the only people that really understand it are the kind of the people who have gone through it. But I love walking onto the pier, and there's always something different going on. There's a ballet performance, there's a comedy show, there's an exhibition, there's a workshop, there's a free make and take. You know, I love that there's always something engaging, and I really love watching the artists grow. And I think the most rewarding thing is when artists leave the pier for the reason that they've gotten too big for the pier, and they're too successful, and so they have to move on to something bigger and better, which is amazing. I think that might be the most rewarding.
Well, thank you for sharing. That concludes our Q&A today. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Sarah?
I would just encourage anyone here that's considering applying to come spend some time on the pier. I'm sure you have. I'm sure you've come seen the studio spaces. Don't be afraid to talk to the artists that are on the pier. You can tell them that you're applying. You can ask them what it's like. They will be honest with you. So you will get the full experience, the goods, the bads, you know, everything. So I encourage you to come and see the space in person and really, you know, talk to the people, see if it's a community that you want to be a part of, because you're interviewing us as much as we're interviewing you. It is really a community. So it's more than just the caliber of your artwork and what you're doing. It also has to do with the community and supporting each other, and wanting to be a part of that experience.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for attending today's info session. Just a reminder, the application deadline is October the 8th, and this webinar is recorded and will be available for access on our website and YouTube in case you feel like you missed anything. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.